sustainability.
Sure. I will just put my camera on for a few seconds just to introduce myself. I'm not sure it's working. I don't know.
We can see you.
Okay, oh, perfect. So because I don't see me, I'm not used to Zoom yet. So I'm Blandine Ledoux. I work in the technical cooperation team, so which is called as well Anton's team, in particular on cost and financing and simulation model. So it's why I will present the simulation model presentation. So I will start presenting my screen. I guess it's this one. So no. Sorry about that. Can you see my screen or?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I think it's a slide we have already seen before in Anton's presentation and maybe others. When we will use a simulation model, it's particularly at the costing and financing stage. In parallel of some of the different steps of planning and developing a new strategy. It will be back and forth between the stage of policy priorities and strategies, program design and action plan to check at each stage if what we foresee is something that is financially feasible. So I think you have already seen a presentation from Luc in module 2 about cost and financing. And his presentation was mostly on how to describe and to assess the cost and financing issues for the current education system. But what we will see today is how we can project what will be the implication of the new strategy, the new policy we want to implement, and how we can cost this new strategy. So in the case of the simulation model, so you've seen, I think, with Luc as well, that there's different source of financing for education, government, household, NGO and churches, public donors and private donors. But in the case of the simulation model, we will mainly focus on the government resources and part of the public donors, which is development partners, not the others. So I have a small poll, so let me try to launch it. I don't know why. Oh, I'm sorry, I cannot launch the poll. I don't know why, because I'm presenting, apparently. It's not working. Let me check. Oh, here, okay. So I think you will see the poll at the same time of my screen. So just a question around cost and financing. So let's say we have the information about 2020 and we know that the budget to enroll 10,000 pupils in public primary school is 100,000. What will be the cost to enroll one pupil? So you have different options, 0.1, 1, 10, or 100. So one person already answered. So we have a budget of 100,000 and we need to enroll 10,000 pupils. So how much is the cost to enroll one pupil? I will wait a bit more. So for the moment, the majority thinks it's 10, but let's wait a few more seconds. Okay, I think I will stop here and we will have other questions. So if I share the results, so the majority thinks that the cost to enroll one pupil is 10. So I will go back to my PowerPoint, and indeed the budget is 100,000. I divide by the 10,000 pupils, so my unit cost is 10. Now my second question, let's go back here. My second question is, in 2030, so it's what I foresee in the future, I expect to have 12,000 pupils to be enrolled in public primary schools. So in that case, what should be my budget to achieve this objective? If the schooling condition remains the same, meaning that the unit cost will remain the same. So we will keep the 10 as a unit cost as in the previous question. So how much should be my budget in 2030 to enroll my 12,000 pupils in 2030? So I give you maybe 1 minute. I think now everybody tends to answer the same way. So it can be 80,000, 100,000, 120,000, 150,000. Maybe a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can stop the polling. And everybody thinks that it's 120,000. And it's exactly how it is, because we have 12,000 pupils and each pupil costs 10. So the budget I need will be 120,000. Now the last question, which is a bit more complicated. I know that in 2020, so in my baseline right now, today, my pupil-teacher ratio was 21, and I want to reduce it to 20 by 2030. I also know that the teacher attrition is 2.5% per year, meaning that I will have 2.5% teachers leaving the system. Maybe they will retire, maybe they will make a career change. So we know that we will need to replace them just because, you know, they will leave the system. So I may need more teachers because I will increase the number of people. The number of people will increase from 10,000 to 12,000. And I will change the schooling condition because my PTR will decrease from 21 to 20. And in addition to that, I will need to replace some of the teachers that will be leaving the system. And we will lose 2.5% of the teaching stock, of the teacher stock every year. So I have another poll for this one, which is a bit more complicated. So how many teachers should you recruit annually on average? Is it 12, 16, 20, or 26? What do you think? I will launch the poll as well. So this one is a bit more complicated. Nobody wants to try? No volunteer? 2% have tried. That's good. 3. Okay. Maybe we will just give a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can end here. So the majority thinks it's 12, and yeah, some, I think a bit less for 16 and 20 that are equals, and then 26. And actually, I will stop the poll here. My answer was just, in that case, it's complicated because we need to take into account different factors, and it's exactly why we need a simulation model. When it's just to do basic calculation as for the 2 first example, it's quite easy, and we don't really need, you know, any specific or complicated or technical tool. But as long as, you know, we need to integrate different dimension, we really need to have a tool to be able to assess properly, you know, what will be the cost in the future. So in that case, the answer was 26. Maybe I will just show, you know, why, but very quickly. So just with an Excel sheet, which could be kind of an extract of a simulation model, I know that the enrollment will grow from 10,000 to 12,000 in 2030. The PTR, so the pupil-teacher ratio, will evolve from 21 to 20. And so I will need, just to respect the PTR, to have in my baseline, I have a bit more than 400 teachers, and I will need 600 teachers in 2030. I also need to take into account the fact that I will need to replace some of the teachers that are already in the system. And so I have this formula here. I don't need to go, into details of the formula, but so on average, if I take the average, it will be on average 26. So it was just to show you that this type of calculation, which of course, you will need to know when you plan for a new strategy, you will need to know and to show, how many teachers you will need to recruit. And so it's why you can still do it, some small calculation, on a paper on the side of what you're doing, but definitely you will need a simulation model when you will need to change different factors and when you will need to plan for the full system. So why do we use a simulation model? It will really be to assess the consequences and the feasibility of specific policy options or a combination of options. And it's exactly what we will do in the later on when we will use a simulation model. And it's what would have been useful, for the previous exercise to assess the financial feasibility of the different options, in that case, to improve the quality of education in primary education. So you can have different situations. For example, you may consider to have automatic promotion of students or to increase teacher salaries, to expand TVET, to provide and build computer labs for all schools, you may want to achieve universal secondary education, or to add 1 year of compulsory preschool to your system. And in that case, you will need a simulation model to assess the human, the feasibility in terms of human resources. Will you be able to train and to recruit the required human resources to achieve your objectives? And to assess, the system capacity. Does the system, as it works now, be able to achieve those objectives? So it's really why we will use a simulation model. So it will be a tool to help policy choices. And so it will make your life easier in terms of calculation, because it will calculate everything for you. You will just need to provide the input to the system, and it will make all calculation. And you will be able to build different scenarios. Maybe your first scenario will be, okay, I will do exactly what I would like to do without any constraints. And maybe if you have the necessary resources to do it, that's fine. And you don't need to build an additional scenario. But maybe you won't have the necessary resources. And in that case, maybe you will try to develop a new scenario, maybe lowering a bit some of the objective to be able to fit in your financial constraint. And it's also a tool to facilitate the policy dialogue. Because, for example, you will have teachers' unions that will promote, a specific policy. Maybe the Ministry of Education will want another policy. Maybe the students will wish to get another policy, and it will be a way to put everybody around the table and to show them the implication of the different choice, and maybe to help to get a consensus around this choice. So we have seen why we use a simulation model. Now, what is a simulation model? A simulation model is just an Excel file which will model the different interaction within the education system. And so it will help to predict the consequences of the policy you're considering for your new strategy in terms of evolution of enrollments, of teachers, of classroom, the number of classrooms you need to build, etc. And what are the subsequent financial needs. And when you will be able to compare the financial needs with the expected resources for the sector, you will be able to estimate the financial gap and to see if you can mobilize additional resources, or maybe if you need to reduce a bit your ambition. And you will also be, so it will be a way to assess the financial sustainability, but also to appreciate the logistical feasibility in the long term. For example, if you need to double the stock of teachers, even if you have the resources to do it, maybe you need to plan to build a new teacher training institute or things like that. So it will be a way as well to assess if it's logistically feasible or not. And please stop me. I may not see the chat, but please stop me if there's any question, and Philippa will interrupt me, and we can answer the question during the presentation. So one of the advantages of the simulation model, and we talk in that case about sectoral simulation model, will be to put all the different reforms into consideration in the sector-wide approach in order to have the holistic vision of the education system. Because of course, the reforms you will foresee for example, primary schools or primary education may have an impact on lower secondary and then on upper secondary. And you need to be able to assess the different implications over the long term. It's also a way to ensure a coherent development of the various subsectors and to avoid, for example, to have, I don't know, TVET policies that is not connected at all with what is foreseen for lower secondary education or things like that, in particular when it's implemented by different ministries. And it's also a way to inform trade-off and to maybe to choose between different policy options. So during the exercise with Anton, you've seen that you have different options, and maybe the financial consideration should be taken into account and may also lead your choice of what you will do to improve the quality of primary education in that case. And one of the great advantage of simulation model is also that it will help facilitating the communication and negotiation between the different stakeholders. So between education ministry technicians and the policy makers, because you know that policy makers need to get inputs from the technicians and factual inputs to evidence-based inputs to make some decision. Between the Ministry of Education and other ministries, in particularly the Ministry of Finance, because if you want to improve some elements of your system and you need more funds for that, definitely the Ministry of Finance should be part of the discussion. And in order maybe to increase the allocation for education. And even between the Ministry of Education and social partners, parents, teachers union, civil society, and as well between the Ministry of Education and development partners. So it will increase the credibility of the education sector plan, and it relates a bit to what Anton has probably presented already about having a sound and a realistic education sector plan, which have more chance to get additional resources from international partners. So what is a general method that is used to build a simulation model? What you want is to describe the future and assess the financial needs based on what you foresee in the future for the education system. What you need is to have the statistics over the past years, at least the 2 last years. You need to define your objectives for the future and to make some assumption as well, in particular in terms of economic growth or things like that, that you will take as a constraint in your model, but you need to have some projections. So how does it work? We'll start with a statistic on the past years, and we'll define some objectives in terms of enrollments. For example, as we were saying in the previous example, we have 10,000 pupils and we want 12,000 pupils in 2030. Based on that, we will define, what will be the enrollments for every year between now and the target year. We need to define as well what will be the learning condition, what will be the pupil-teacher ratio, how many textbooks should the pupil get, etc., etc. And so we will define, based on that, what are the physical resources that will be needed to achieve the objective in terms of quantity and in terms of quality, quality being perceived as the input you will have to ensure some quality in the system, textbooks and teachers and things like that. Each of these items has a cost. We have an average salary for teachers. We know that textbooks have a cost, etc., etc., etc. And so we have the number of teachers we need, the number of textbooks, etc. We know how much they cost. We multiply the two, and so we get the financial requirements in terms of salaries, current expenditure in general, and capital expenditures. So how does it work concretely? Maybe I won't take too much time on that because it may be slightly technical, just to show you, what the logic's behind. We know the population for grade 1. And we know that just because we have statistics, and you have a National Institute of Statistics, and they know, how many children, for example, of 6-year-old we have in the country, and how this number should evolve over the year. So it's something we know. It's not something that is produced by education, but it exists in the system. And we have information on enrollments and repeaters by grade for the 2 last years. So we can, it's information we have already available in the system. Based on that, we can calculate, what is a gross intake rate, the number of new entrants that will be enrolled in grade 1 in year N, compared to the population that should be enrolled in grade 1 based on the population. And we can as well calculate, based on the information, the statistical information produced by the education system, we can calculate repetition rate and promotion rate. And based on this information, we know how much are, the level of the gross intake rate, repetition rate, and promotion rate. We may know how we want them to evolve in the future. We know, for example, that if the promotion rate is at 80% in grade 1, maybe I want to improve the quality of education delivered in grade 1, and we will see, by which action, it can be improved. And based on this improvement, maybe I can expect the promotion rate to achieve 90%, for example. And so I can see, to achieve this, I can project what should be the evolution of my gross intake rate, and the same for repetition rate and promotion rate over the year. And based on this projection, I can calculate enrollment and repeaters for year N+1, and so on, and so on, and so on. So I don't need that much information. I need the evolution of the population, information on school enrollment and repeaters for the last 2 years, and objectives in terms of gross intake rate, repetition rate, and promotion rate. So it's quite simple. And so now I have my enrollment. I can calculate the number of inputs I need in the system. And the first inputs, even if it's not a nice word, is just teachers, because without teachers, you don't have an education system. So I know first my number of students every year in the future year based on what I've just presented. And I will have an objective in terms of student per teacher. So I have the number of students. I know how many students should be taught by a teacher. And so I can determine the number of teachers I will need in my system. I know how much one teacher is paid. And so I will know the wage bill. It's how I will estimate for every year the wage bill in terms of teacher salary. I have another method. Maybe I will just present 2. There's different ones that may be a bit more complicated, but another way to see that is to have just a number of students. We know how many students we'll have per class. Based on that, we will determine the number of classes. We know how many teachers on average we will have per classes, and then we will determine the number of teachers. And the same way, based on the average salary, we will determine the wage bill. And we do exactly the same for most of the inputs. In the term of classroom, it's exactly the same. We have the number of students. We know how many students per class. It's an objective. We know how much it is right now, and we know what will be my objective, for example, in 10 years' time. And so how many classes I will need every year. We know that we will need to determine as well the number of classes per classroom, and then we will get the number of classroom. As you know, a classroom doesn't have to change every year based on the number of classroom. We just need to calculate how many new classroom we will need every year. We know the cost of one classroom, and then we will determine the cost for building a classroom. So it's the main principles that I use in the simulation model. I don't know if there's any question at this stage or if I can continue, but it's really very mechanical, actually. Everything is based on the enrollment and the level of the different inputs related to the evolution of the enrollment and the cost of each of these inputs. So we have discussed about what will be the expenditures that are foreseen in the future, but we need as well to estimate what will be the resources for the system in the future. And we start with the national wealth, so the GDP, and we will take just a share of the GDP, which will be the domestic resources. So how do we extract, part of the national resources? It's really the tax that are collected by the government. And the domestic resources, some countries will get as well external resources that will become the full resources for the government to achieve, its objectives. And based on these resources, the government will prepare or will plan some expenditures, which will be altogether will constitute the budget. We know that the budget is usually above the resources, and we may have, and in most countries we have, a budget deficit that will need to be financed, on the private sector or else, but just to mention it, but it's not really important. And so we'll define in that way, what can be the expected budget globally over the next 5 to 10 years, and part of this budget will be allocated to education. So it's how in the simulation model, we will try to integrate, the evolution of resources over the time. So we have the projected expenditure based on the macroeconomic framework. We will define what will be the resources in the future. And if we make the difference, it will give us a financing gap. If we have a financing gap, maybe we have different options. We may try to mobilize additional resources if it's feasible. Otherwise, we may need to revise what we foresee, what we expect, just to match with the resources we can mobilize for the education system. So the simulation model is still a very powerful tool, but it's not solving all issues. In particular, you still need to go through the sector analysis step, just because the simulation model requires a lot of information that will be mobilized and analyzed in the education sector analysis step. So it will help you to define, what will be the structure of the simulation model, because it has to be aligned and fully aligned on, how the education system is defined and can be described. And information, the quality of the data you will use in your simulation model is really essential to have clean and good projection. And in the education sector analysis, you will already have triangulated the information. For example, you will have checked that the number of teachers in the HR database is consistent with what you will have in the payroll, with what you will have in the EMIS database, etc., because usually all the source of information, they don't cover exactly the same scope, and it's really, really complicated to get the full picture, taking into account all the information that are really available. So all this check and data crunching will be done at the education sector analysis stage. And the education sector analysis will also help to identify the potential relevance of the different options you may foresee for the future to improve your system. But a simulation model is not at all a substitute for actions. And it doesn't mean that if you put some information in the simulation model, they won't be implemented if you don't do anything else. It's just, if you achieve what you want to achieve, it tells you, how much it will cost. But it doesn't tell you how you will be able to achieve the target you would like to aim at. And it's not a tool at all for addressing management issue. For example, if you, maybe the number of teachers you will assess in the need of teachers you will assess in the simulation model, the model won't tell you at all, where they should be allocated in the country. So it doesn't deal at all with management issue. And the simulation model, it's really something quantitative. It will estimate the needs and quantify the cost, but it doesn't take into account any qualitative, and in particular the stakeholder analysis that we have just done. The simulation model won't be able to cover anything related to that. So it's really a quantitative tool, but it is not sufficient alone, but it's really complements, the full process. And there's some limits, in particular related to data, because to feed the baseline, you need really qualitative data. and that are often not directly available. So promotion rates and repetition rate, usually when you just take information from the EMIS system, sometimes you will have promotion rates above 100%, which is not feasible. Or maybe the repetition rates are sometimes a bit lower than what you can see in reality or things like that. So you really need to clean your data. And in particular, yeah, there's different type of problem. Maybe I will move a bit faster, otherwise we won't have time. But really, you really need to have clean data. Otherwise, you know, bad data means poor projection. As we said, you know, garbage in, garbage out. So the quality of data is really fundamental to get good projection. There's a question as well of country ownership and capacity, because developing a simulation model, even if it's not that complicated, it still requires some technicity, and so countries often rely on external experts to develop simulation model. But at the end, the results may not be owned. So actually, you know, it will have less impact on sustainability. And there's sometimes a disconnection, quite often actually, between the structure of the simulation model and the education sector plan structure. For example, you will have an education sector plan that is divided between access, quality, and management. In the simulation model, the division is not like that. And you will get, you know, more, you know, something related to primary education, preschool, primary education, lower secondary education, etc., etc. So the structure is quite different. And it may be different as well with the implementation or action plan, and in particular, the budget law as well. So it's in particular when you have different ministries covering education, the education model will cost, you know, how much it represents for the full education system. But when you will receive the budget law, it will be by ministry, and you may not see directly the connection. So it's something that we need to work on. And so to improve simulation model, what we try to do is first to improve the information system to make sure that, you know, information to fit simulation model is easily available and accurate from the EMIS system at least, and even from the financial system. Try to enhance internalization of the simulation model within governments, in particular when there's some adjustments that needs to be done to make sure that government can do everything by itself without, you know, requesting additional support from abroad. And to try to build bridges between the tools, in particular, you know, the simulation model and tools that are developed by the Ministry of Finance, to make the connection between the different tools, and to see in what extent, you know, the budget at the end is coherent with what is foreseen by the Ministry of Education. And just a word, we don't really, it does not matter, but I don't know if at some point you use different simulation model, or you have the opportunity to look at different simulation model. There's a lot of different type of simulation model. Only within UNESCO, we have at least 3, maybe 4. But just what you need to know is that, you know, even the design is completely different depending on the simulation model. Definitely most of the technical features and the main relationship, you know, between the estimation you will see are the same. So they look completely different, but actually they're doing something that is really, really close. So it does not really matter, you know, which type of simulation model you use, but what is important is to try to understand, you know, what is the logic and what the simulation model does. So I think I'm done for the presentation. I don't know if there's any question, or if we move to the kind of an example, a concrete example of the simulation model to see more concretely how it works. I don't know if there's any question. No? Okay. So I will switch to the simulation model. So in that case, it's really an extract of a simulation model, just because a simulation model can be 10 sheets with hundreds and hundreds of rows. And it can be quite impressive and maybe scary, while, you know, actually it's always the same logics behind. So it's just a repetition and repetition, but it can be too heavy. So in that case, it's just an extract of a simulation model just to see how it works. And in that case, the evolution of enrollments we have already done it, and we took the results just to plug in this simulation model, but actually, you know, it's not calculation, just to focus on the dimension of quality, and in particular, the different options and the different strategies that you discussed in the group work we have just done. So actually, in this country, we have the information. So we have an analysis, an education sector analysis for 2019. And all the information in green come from the education sector analysis. All the information in yellow, it's the target that we would like to reach, you know, by the end of the plan. In that case, is 2027. And what is in gray is actually what comes from the other part of the simulation model, but just to summarize and simplify, you have just extract, you know, this dimension. So for this country, we know that we have 37,774 pupils in primary education in 2019. And we know, based on the objective in terms of enrollment that we would like to reach in 2027, that the number of pupils should increase up to 38,077 in 2027. So we have already the evolution of the enrollments. It's something that has already been agreed upon, and so the decision has been made about enrollments, and it's how it will evolve over the year. Now, what we need to decide is the schooling conditions that will be offered to those pupils. And it's exactly the same strategies as those that you have already discussed. So we have the class size, the number of children that will learn together. And in that case, you know, for the baseline, so we have the number of classes, and you have the number of pupils, and so we can calculate just, you know, oh, I wanted to do a poll, I forgot, I've just remembered. To check how familiar you are with Excel, just to see, you know, if we need to take more time. Yeah.
Can you please zoom in a bit?
Okay,
it's
sure.
a bit small for
Okay,
people.
sure. Yeah, sorry. And I will just take the opportunity to launch the poll to see, you know, how you feel about Excel. And in particular, you know, if you're a beginner with Excel, beginner, intermediate, advanced intermediate, or advanced, just to see if we can go fast with some elements, or if we need to take time and just to see exactly how it works. And we won't go into too much detail anyway, but just to see, you know, if we take more or less time, you know, just even with the Excel part of the exercise. So I will put it bigger. Okay, so I think there's a mix. 1/3 is intermediate, and the other third is more beginner, and the other third is advanced. So I will, anyway, you know, we won't go into too much detail about Excel, but please feel free to stop me if it's going too fast, and, you know, if you want more explanation, please let me know. In terms of size, is it good, or do you see better now?
Yes, I think it's
okay.
better
Perfect.
for everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe we will just go through the different dimensions of the model, and then we will try to see how we will use it. So as I was saying, we know the evolution of the enrollment based on decisions that have already been made, and now we need to make some decision about the type of service, sort of, you know, those pupils will receive. So we have the class size, so the number of pupils per class. On average, it's 22. And I will just freeze that. Okay, to keep, okay. So right now, for the year 2019, which is my baseline, it's on average 22. Okay, so we will move further. And we know as well that we have 1,754 teachers. So on average, I have close to one teacher per class. And if I combine the two information, it means that my PTR, my pupil-teacher ratio is 21.5. In terms of teachers, I have 3 different categories of teachers. The teachers that are trained and qualified, the untrained and qualified, and the trained and unqualified. So it refers to the strategy that we were mentioning. Maybe you want to change the profile of the teacher that are in the system. Maybe you will want to recruit only trained and qualified teachers in the future. Of course, those teachers are a bit more expensive. So we have the salary a bit below. And we have the current situation, and we'll discuss, if it's something, at least what will be the financial implication of recruiting more of category A or category B or category C, in the future. So the idea of the simulation model will only be based on your discussion and the one you had about stakeholder analysis and even, the diagnostic and what are the real problem of primary education in that country and in what extent, improving the profile of teachers may solve some of the bottlenecks and some of the issues related to quality of education that you have identified in the education sector analysis. We have also non-teaching staff, and in particular, education officer and what we call other admin staff. And if you want to improve the supervision of teacher, it may be something that you want to change because, for example, right now we have for 100 teachers, we have 3 education officer. Is it something that is good? Maybe if we want to improve the supervision, maybe we should have more education officer, and maybe we would like to try, for example, to have 1 education officer for 10 teachers or things like that. So it's something that we may be able to test. And of course, for this different category of staff, we have different type of salary. And of course, when we will try to play with the simulation model and to see, okay, what will be the implication of recruiting only trained and qualified teacher? How much more expensive can it be compared to recruiting only, trained and unqualified teachers, things like that. And we have also the other measures that you were discussing. So right now, we have 100% of the pupils enrolled in public schools that are benefiting from free textbooks. But the number of textbooks they can get from the ministry is 3. Maybe they need 5, or maybe they need 6. And maybe we can consider the option of providing the 6th textbook for all students, or maybe for half of the students. Or it's something that we may want to try. And in that case, we didn't. I liked, what one of you said during the group exercise, that normally, if we get the textbook back at the end of the school year, we may just, we can buy less textbooks, and maybe we can replace the stock of textbook only every 3 years or something like that. So of course, it's less expensive than just replacing all textbooks every year. It has not been integrated in the model right now, but if, in a real case, it was part of the discussion, we will adjust the simulation model to integrate, this option of replacing, for example, every year, 1/3 of the stock of textbooks or something like that. So for the moment, just to keep it very simple, the simulation model, we don't have this type of options, but definitely it will be done, if it was a real sort of real simulation model. So we can cost what will be the policy in terms of free textbooks. In terms of teaching materials as well, here we see that, for example, teachers, there's only 1 set of teaching materials for 2 teachers, maybe with some things that we need to improve to improve quality in primary education. Right now, there's no free meal policy. And if I want to introduce this policy, I will just need to define how much, what is the percentage of pupils that will benefit from this new policy. And we have already, we have an estimation of the cost per pupil. And so we just need to multiply the number of beneficiaries by the unit cost, and we will know how much this policy will represent. And we have also, you know, how much it costs for an education officer to be able to supervise, you know, the different teacher under his responsibility. So if I increase, of course, the number of education officer, I will increase automatically the budget allocated for the supervision. And I have as well, you know, some other expenditure. But so just to show that in that case, everything will be connected already. So based on your decision on class size and on teacher per class, it will calculate the number of teachers. Based on the number of teachers, it will be split by category based on what you want, who will be the new teachers that you want to recruit. Will that be trade and qualified, and trade and unqualified, and trade and qualified, etc. So everything will be already in the model, and what you have to do is just to adjust the yellow cell, and everything will be calculated automatically. So actually, you just need to make a decision on, you know, the targets for the different strategies that you were discussing in the group work, and then you will get automatically the cost of implementing this strategy. So maybe we can try and to see how it works concretely. So if I just split my screen just to keep an eye on the cost at the end, right now, okay, I will, sorry about that. Here, I just want to see, you know, at the end, the total current expenses. So it's the same simulation model. I just split my screen to be able to scroll, you know, at the top, and to keep an eye on the total cost and how much, you know, it will cost to implement this strategy. So if I keep it there here, and we can try to change. For the moment, everything is the statu quo. So my class size in grade 1 is 22, and it will remain 22, etc., etc., etc. So right now, I have not changed anything. If I keep exactly the same system as it is now, it's just that my enrollments will increase by 10. And in that case, my budget, the total current expenses, will also increase by 10%, just because of the evolution and the increase in enrollments. But the system remains exactly the same as today. If I want to change the system to improve quality, let's say, for example, that, you know, in terms of class size, a class size of 22 or 24, maybe, oh, I don't know. There's a lot of discussion on the chat.
No worries, it's just about lost connection and explanations.
Okay, perfect, okay. And so maybe we think that 20, 24, 23 is a bit too high. And I want to reduce the class size and to put 20. I just put 20 here. Maybe, you know, if I just copy and paste, if I keep exactly the same organization as now, I will need in 2027, 1,720 teachers. If I just say, okay, my class size should be decreased and be at 20, and I will put 20 for all the different grades because there's no real reason to have a difference. Instead of 1,720, I will need 1,904 teachers. So I increase my number of teachers, but just because I decrease my class size. I think it's quite straightforward. But so everything will be calculated automatically. And in that case, just by changing the class size, I can see how will evolve the total current expenses. From 86 today, it will increase to 95 in 2027, meaning that my global current expenditure, recurrent expenditure, will increase on average by 1.24% per year, just by improving and reducing, in that case, the class size. So everything is calculated automatically. If I put, maybe, you know, if I think, you know, it may be a bit too expensive, maybe I will just put 21, and everything, of course, will be recalculated automatically. And in that case, you know, instead of a bit more than 1,900, it will be 1,813 teachers. And I will reduce a bit my increase to 0.69%. So, but let's say now that, you know, we just keep an eye on the financial information just to see what is the impact of what I try to plan for the future. But let's say that we don't really have a constraint on resources, and we will just put, you know, what we would like for the system. And I will say, okay, 20 is good. And I will put 20 for all of them. So I know now my number of teachers. I won't change that for the moment. And now what I need to define is the type of teacher I would like to recruit for the new recruitment. I know already those teachers that are already in the system. I know that I will lose every year 2.5% of the teacher just due to attrition, so retirement and career change or things like that. And now for new teachers, I think probably that, you know, normally the category A teacher are probably, they are trained and qualified, so they're probably better than the others. Of course, they are more expensive, but they are better. So maybe I will try to recruit only those teachers in the future. So all of the teachers, 100% of the new teachers will be from category A. In that case, so I don't remember how much it was before. So it was the financial implication, the annual increase on average was 1.24. If I keep exactly the same share of the different category of teachers in the system, if I prefer to recruit only category A, it will increase close to 2%. So of course it has a financial impact, but we can think that, you know, it's better for quality, so just go for that. Maybe I also want to improve supervision and to have more education officer in the system. Instead of having 3 education officer, maybe, you know, you have some rules and regulation, and it's something that can be tested. But instead of having 3 for 100 teachers, I would like to have 1 for 10 teachers. So in that case, it's 0.1. Oops. Here, 0.1. So right now, I needed only 105. Sorry, where is it? Oh, I need to change that. Just to see the difference. If I keep the situation as it is, you know, my need in terms of education officer was 65 in 2027. If I improve the supervision and if I have more education officer, instead of 65, I will need 196 education officer to supervise my teachers. And automatically, the cost will be updated. And in that case, we have the evolution of the recurrent expenditures, and it represents an increase on average by 3.41% per year of the recurrent budget to be able to cover, you know, the cost of this new policy. Now, if we continue, so we don't have to change, you know, the salmon cell just because it's unit costs that we don't really decide. The salary of the different category of teachers, it's kind of, you know, there's a pay scale, there's some rules about allowances they will get, and so you don't really choose, you know. So it's something that is defined in the model, and even the cost of a textbook, it's something that, you know, you will collect from the Ministry of Finance or from, you know, the Directorate of Finance within the Ministry of Education, and we can get some average, and it's something that, you know, we know. So we just need to change, you know, the yellow cell, which is the target, which are the target and the objective for the end of the plan. In that case, I have already, you know, all students benefiting from textbooks, but only for 3 textbooks. Maybe I want them to get the 5 textbooks that are, you know, consistent with the curricula. In that case, it will progressively move from 3 to 5, and I've moved here. Of course, it will increase as well, you know, what are the financial needs to be able to implement this policy. In terms of teaching materials and teaching materials set by teacher, maybe I will put 1, but we can see that, you know, it's not really, the total cost is not really high. And so if here it's still 0.05 million. If I put 1, it will be 0.1. It's not really expensive. What may be expensive will be the school canteen, so the free meals. Right now, there's no pupils benefiting from a free meal at lunch. Alors, in that case, we will look more specifically at the cost. So we don't have any beneficiary right now. So of course, the cost is 0. If I want everybody to get a free meal in public schools, it will cost 38 million, you know, on average per year. And in that case, I would need to increase my budget on average by 7.40% every year to be able to implement this policy. Maybe I don't need to provide free meal to all pupils. Maybe I need to target only the 10% that are coming from the poorest family. In that case, of course, instead of, you know, having a 7.4 increase per year, it will be just a almost 4% increase per year. So it really depends, you know, what you want to test and what you want to what you have discussed in your group, and to try to make a combination of the different options and to see, you know, what would allow you think to meet, you know, the target and the objective you would like to achieve by 2027. So maybe I will just stop here for a few minutes and to see if you have any question, or maybe if it's clear, if it's not clear, if we need to do something again. No comments?
Question.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I'm assuming that you're gonna let us use this model when we're doing the team work?
Exactly.
Team assignment, good.
Exactly.
The second question then, we're gonna all use the same cost, those, what's that, red, brown, orangish color? So we don't change that?
No, you just change the yellow cell. Yeah.
Okay, understood.
You have the same constraint. And you just try, maybe you may would like to test, you know, different option, and you just have the possibility to test all the 5 options, but different level of option. For example, some groups may decide, okay, I will just recruit 50% of category A and 25% of category B, and automatically, you know, 25% of category C. Some other group will say, okay, no, I don't want, it's not something, a strategy that I like to pursue, and I would like just to focus maybe on free meal. So yeah, you just try to test your own strategies by changing the yellow cell in the simulation model only. Yeah.
So one final question, the assignment asks us to choose just 2, I mean, at least 1, 2. So the other 3 that are there, we'll have to delete them or 0 them?
Actually, you know, I think Anton will explain that a bit further, but you will be free actually in choosing, you know, the type of strategies you would like to test and to plan for the future. You won't have the constraint. You will choose the one you want, and even maybe the 5 if you want, but you will have more flexibility. But Anton will explain further that, you know, just after this presentation.
Okay, thank
you. Any other question? Anyway, you will have, you know, you have already the Excel file on the platform. And so you may reach out to us anytime just to say, okay, I'll try that, but it doesn't work, or I don't know what it's doing, or I don't know how to see the results of the change, etc. So please feel free to drop me a line and to write me an email just to ask any question you may have, because when you're used to that, it's quite easy and you can move quite fast. When it's the first time you see it, it takes a bit more time to get used to the logics and to see, you know, where is the different information and where you can see the results of what you have just changed. So it may take time the first time, but yeah, I'm totally available in the next days or weeks to reply to any question you may have.
just
Yeah.
one more question from me.
Sure.
Did you say that you were going to put an extra feature in so that we can adjust
We
for the
can.
textbooks?
Yeah, I
Because
can.
I
If
think,
it's
yeah.
something you would like to test, and I think it makes sense, definitely we can add, you know, the replacement rate of textbooks, and just to take into account the fact that we don't have to replace all books every year. So it's just
Yeah.
because I wanted to keep it simple initially, but if it's something you have already in mind, I can adjust it and we can upload the new version maybe later today or at the
Well,
latest tomorrow to take that into account. Yeah, sure.
yeah, because I think countries will be able to use this,
Yeah,
you know, for
yeah,
the
yeah. No, it makes
reality on
sense.
the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Right, definitely. Yeah. Any other question, or, you know, is it clear or not really, not yet, but you think it will be fine, or maybe, you know, if you're completely lost and you don't see at all what we have been doing for the last 30 minutes, tell me. Okay. So I don't know if you know we need to try to dig a bit further in the model, or if Anton you want maybe to introduce the team exercise, or
Yeah, what I maybe suggest, because it is already close to the time that we wanted to stop, is that we explain the exercise that you will have to do. And if while doing the exercise, you encounter, hopefully in each national team, because the exercise will be by country team, as you did the exercise for module 2, hopefully for each country team, you have one planner or statistician who is a little bit used to working at least with Excel for sure, and very quickly understands how the simulation model functions. I wouldn't be surprised that several of you have not fully grasped that, because ideally this is a session where we are actually sitting together with you, forgetting about social distancing, masks and all that sort of thing, and where where you try something, and if it works, so much better. If it doesn't work, we come and see you and so on. We cannot do that at the moment. So I think that it might make more sense that we give you the exercise, we explain the group work you have to do. We have agreed, I think, not fully sure, but I think we have agreed that we are going to do the remainder of the course at a rhythm a little bit slower than we've done so far, because you have a lot of complicated matters to handle, which are certainly more urgent, in particular school reopening under COVID-19. And therefore, we wanted to give you an extra week after this module to do the exercise. So that means that you would have till about, I think, the 5th of October, which gives you quite a bit of time, these 3 days now, a weekend, another week, a weekend, and so on, to do the exercise. I would suggest that when you are doing the exercise, if you have a problem, let us know, and then either I or Blandine, or if necessary another colleague, can find 15-20 minutes to work with you, to explain together with you the exercise. That to me seems the most productive way of proceeding. Take into account that both Blandine and I from Thursday onwards will be in France, and therefore with a time difference. I hope that's okay. What I'll do then is to present the assignment. It was distributed to already. Let me just look where, if I can quickly find it and then show it. I need to just check for a second. So let me see if I can show this assignment now. Show screen. Share screen. I think it's this, and share. Does everybody see this assignment? Blandine to the one?
Yes.
Oui.
Okay, good. Thanks, Philippa. So the assignment is as follows. So well, the main purpose of this module, the main intended learning objective of this module is that you could argue the choice of priorities with a specific example. There were different examples that we could have imagined. We could have asked you to argue a choice between expanding, for instance, early childhood education and making technical and vocational education more available to a larger number of people, which is also a very important priority choice. But that became quite complex, and therefore we decided to focus on a question which is at the heart of every education system: how to improve quality by a relatively artificial example, where we indeed offer you the choice between 5 different strategies, the strategies we have been working on today. And your exercise now is to prepare a note, which you as a team address to a large extent to a minister or maybe to a wider public, as you prefer, with some strategic advice on what is the strategy or set of strategies that you could develop on improving quality in primary education. And these are the 5 strategies. And your arguments should be on the political supportability. You may argue that, for instance, from a political point of view, you may want to strengthen teacher supervision and accountability. That's important. But in exchange, you will have to offer the teachers also something that they will find more attractive, because not every teacher will find teacher supervision and accountability very attractive. And therefore, you will also decrease the number of pupils per class, for instance. So you will want to, maybe you decide that you focus on one single strategy. You feel within your particular context that the improving teacher profile is the major strategy to improve quality in primary education, and you decide that's what we will focus on and the rest we forget about. Or you divide, or you set up a set of strategies together, a combination of different. And you argue for the political supportability of the chosen strategy by using the stakeholder metrics, which you did very well in the group work. And then you look at the financial feasibility. And for the financial feasibility, indeed, as Hyacinth was asking and as Blandine responded, we want you to use that simulation model that we have shared with you, and keeping into account that you are working within a relatively tight financing framework, whereby the average increase of recurrent costs over years, every year, cannot be more than 2%. And you will have seen in the simulation model that once you change your scenario, as we call that, you see on the right hand corner in the bottom, you will see the average share changing each time, the average increase rather, changing every time. And so you might want to start working, okay, I just say something, you feel that we really need to decrease the number of pupils per class to 15, and you check what does that do to your overall increase, and I would imagine this goal will increase it to more than 2%. Blandine showed once you offer free meals to everybody, your increase becomes very high. So what you will try to do is to find a set of strategies, or maybe one strategy that is both politically supportable, for which you think you will be able to gain the political support. Political in this case, stakeholders, not simply party politics, but stakeholders, and that is still financially sustainable. And what we would like you to do, so you'll do that within each country team. If you have you do that within each country team. It should not be a very lengthy document. You don't need to add a lot of narrative to it. You need to show you need to briefly explain why you think from a political point of view, this is acceptable, this will work well, by showing the stakeholder analysis. And you need to show, of course, from a financial point of view, how that will be feasible. You'll need to submit it on the virtual platform. We've given you until the 5th of October in the evening. We understand the constraints you're facing, and the next module will then only start that particular day, the 5th of October. The assignment will be graded. Blandine and I, maybe Blandine more than I will see, will give you personalized feedback. And you do it by country team. let me stop a minute here to see if you have questions now already. But I repeat that when you are doing it and you feel that something doesn't work, let us know. I would imagine that if something either does not work or is not fully clear, it will be more related to the simulation model, but you can let both Blandine and I know, or you do it through the virtual platform. Let me wait a second to see if anybody has any questions, if any hands are raised or anything like that. Sometimes Zoom is a pest and I cannot see anything. I'll stop sharing for a moment so that I can see if there is any questions. Not at the moment, I think.
Just that.
Whoever, let me hear from somebody, yes.
Okay, Trinity, George.
Yes, hi, thank you. Will the simulation be posted in the forum for us, so at least we can interact with it for a while? Okay.
Yeah. So I think the model has already been shared with you.
Okay, great.
And feel free to work on it and so on.
Okay,
I know this is really quite. I must admit that both Blandine and I hesitated a bit, and the other members of the team hesitated a bit, if we should include an exercise which is somewhat technical. But I think it's important. I think it's important that everybody understands the financial implications of particular strategic choices, and that you understand also what the model can help you with and what it cannot help you with. Just Blandine gave already the example. The model can help you in knowing the cost of recruiting additional teachers. The model will not tell you how to employ these teachers or how to distribute these teachers among different schools. The model can tell you, okay, we will have more supervisors, but obviously when an education officer goes to school, they can do many different things. Some things are more useful than others. Finally, the cost to the model is the same. So the model has its limits, but it is also very useful when it comes to actually a financial estimate of, well, an estimate of the financial implications of our strategic choices in the future. We'll still come back to that a little bit in module 4. That was a long answer to a simple question. Any other questions? Okay, then I think we will stop here.
One question, Doc.
Yeah, hi, Sant, yes.
You did not let us know. Okay, the module presently has in all 5 areas, but you asked us to do 1 or 2. So what do we do with it?
No, I didn't ask you 1 or 2. You can do actually all. You can do to a large extent whatever you want with these 5 strategies. It is. We just ask you to present. If the right term is here, to present a strategy or a package of strategies to improve the quality of education. You may feel, for instance, that actually we don't need all teachers to have these higher qualifications and more years of training, but we want at least 40% of teachers to have them. So you will, for that one, you will decide 40. You may decide that you will want only 20% of students to have free meals because these are the students that are most in need. You will put 20% there. You may feel that on teacher supervision, you don't touch because that works well. We don't need to touch that. And you may feel that when it comes to free textbooks, again, we don't touch that. But you may still want to change the 5th strategy. So you can develop a package, and you can, that's a bit the idea, you can play with it a little bit in 2 ways that you can get used to seeing how a simulation model works. Not for you necessarily to use it, some of you may want to use it, but for everybody to understand how the game works to some extent. It's to some extent a game, but a very useful game. But you also do it so that you can find the best possible strategy to improve quality, and that you can see how different strategies have different implications on the short and the long term. Okay?
Yeah, so then you present the political, the matrix on just 2?
No, for the matrix, again, good question, sorry. The matrix would be the idea that you develop your package. You say your package will include, as I said, maybe a bit more increasing the profile of teachers, And this we know to be something that is popular. We know that this has cost implications, but, and therefore the Ministry of Finance could propose it, but we are not proposing more free school meals. So it's an intervention that nevertheless the Ministry of Finance should be able to accept. So you will do the stakeholder analysis for the package of strategy, or it's your decision, but you do only one stakeholder analysis for the combination of strategies that you have proposed. I trust that this is. I trust that it is clear. I'm not sure it's easy, but if it were easy, we wouldn't ask you to do it. I mean, that's not the purpose of learning. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think then if I think we can with this. Yes, please.
Anton,
Go ahead. Yes.
I just made the adjustment about the duration of textbooks. Maybe I can show it. I can show how it can be used
Yes,
in 2
please.
seconds. But maybe for those that are now interested in these measures, they can still use the other model that is maybe slightly simpler. And for those that would like to take that into account, just to see how they can use it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
That was a simulation model with a human face, which is a rare.
Is
it
it
rarely the case. At the moment, it is not yet working, but I think. Yeah, now it is working.
Okay, so you need to decide the percentage of beneficiaries and then the number of textbooks per pupil if you want to increase from 3 to 5, etc., as we did before. And now you have the replacement rate per year. So if I put 100%, you replace, it was as it was before, so you replace all book every year. And if you put, for example, 33%, it means that, every year you will replace 1/3 of your stock of books, and you will sometimes, increase the number of books just because the number of pupils is increasing as well. But so it will calculate the number of books to be bought. Oh, sorry, it's the end of the day here. Will be calculated automatically. So if you put 100%, it's as it was before, you replace all books every year. And if, for example, you consider that you can keep a book for 4 years, you can just put 25%, and every year you will replace 25% of your stock of books. So it's just these parameters that will be used to take into account the duration of a textbooks. Is that okay? But for those that don't want to implement these strategies, they can still, use the other simulation model that was shared previously. So just maybe for the group which would like to try that.
Okay, I hope that's clear. The reason, for instance, to have 100% would be to a large extent that the students can really keep their textbook. They can keep it at home. They can work on it the whole time. It's their textbook. They can make notes on it. They can draw little figures on it, whatever. They can get angry at it and tear up a page and all that sort of thing. And that would be the reason that, by keeping their own textbook, they can, in principle, maybe learn more than if they cannot really interact as such with the textbook. That could be one reason. But indeed, the financial implication, of course, is evident again. Okay. I think then, if you all agree, we will stop here. Thank you, Blandine. It's more pleasant to say goodbye with human face than with a simulation model. We continue to thank you for your interest in this course, for your hard work on it. We know that this is a course that is really that can be challenging at times because of the time it takes, the time you have to invest in it during a period that is particularly challenging at the moment, and of course on a topic that is not close to the professional expertise and experience of each and every single one of you, but we hope that we found interesting and useful materials. We'll inform you soonest, that will be probably at latest tomorrow, about a bit of rescheduling, because we are seeing together with our colleagues from OECS and the people who fund this, the World Bank and GP, if we can simply, as I said, slow down a little bit the rhythm of implementation of the course, so that you have a bit more time to dedicate to the course and to your other work, daily work, which is particularly difficult at the moment. But we'll let you know that tomorrow, I think. I'll be leaving Grenada, unfortunately, on Thursday. I'm sorry about that, but we'll keep in touch, of course, and we will continue to work together over the next few days and weeks. Thank you very much for all your attention, and have a good afternoon in the Eastern Caribbean. Take good care. Thanks.